Send us those motors. It's the perfect time of year. It's still kind of chilly. Great time to get them built up and going. But this video is going to be for you DIY guys. There's going to be 2 parts to this. And hopefully you enjoy this video, guys. What's up, everybody? I want to say thank you for tuning in to another episode of Kart Smart TV. Today I'm going to do a full breakdown on disassembling a pre-MCI EZGO Robin 295. Here is our engine. You can see right here on the bottom of the block you'll have your ID stamped, and you can see right here it says 0.295. so that is going to be how you identify the size of this engine. So this one is the 295. Also on the carburetor side of the engine you have this plastic shield here. If we move this dipstick out of our way, you can also see that it has EH29C. Right there it says model EH29C. That's also another place you can identify what size engine you have. Alright, so you're going to have this 16mm bolt in the clutch. Once you get this bolt out of your way, it's going to come out and be pretty long. Oh yeah, I also want to mention you might want to get you a magnetic tray as well, so that you can retain all your nuts and bolts and everything that's going to come off of this. Here's the trays I like to use. I'm pretty sure like Harbor Freight or somewhere like that has them, but I'm going to let that stick to the table. And then we'll take this bolt and obviously put it in the magnetic tray back here. When you go to pull the clutch off, that's where your clutch puller tool is going to come in handy. You're just going to put that in here, tighten it down until it pops the clutch off. That's exactly what it'll do, is that puts pressure on the end of the crankshaft here, and it just pops the clutch off of the crankshaft. Alright, so now that we got our clutch out the way, I'm going to spin this thing around, and I'm going to get our coil out of the way. It's going to be a 10mm nut on the top up here. Alright, next thing we're going to do is get our fan shroud out the way. It's got 1, 2, 3 10mm around it. Alright, now that we got our fan shroud out the way, we want to get our fan off. Here's where you may end up having to use your air impact on this big nut that holds the fan on. Oh, nice. So I basically just break it loose. I leave it on as much, and here's where you got 2 options when it comes to taking the fan off. I use the pry bar a lot of times. Put it in behind the fan. I put my weight up against it like so. I put my weight on that and give the flywheel nut a pop with my hammer here. Alright, but also these fans have 3 small holes that you can use this puller for. Alright, so the crankshaft comes out right here. You're going to put this puller right here, and then you would just tighten it in until it popped off the crankshaft, because it has a keyway in it. Hopefully you can see that keyway slot there. And once you get it to pop loose off the keyway, it'll fall right off. But I don't normally do that unless I have to, because most of the time this works pretty good by putting a little pressure on a pry bar. Giving a nice couple little smacks there. And there you have it come off. At this point, I'll take a little flathead screwdriver and get my keyway out right here. You can see the keyway there. I'll knock the keyway out the way, put it in my magnetic tray. Alright, so once I get this side opened up, spin it back around, and I'm going to get our timing cover off. 3 10mm bolts hold the timing cover on. Again, we're going to get our electric impact gun. Alright, so now you can see that you can see your timing gears, the lower balance shaft gear and the upper camshaft gear. At this point, you're going to take a 10mm on your electric impact or ratchet. If you don't have access to an impact gun like this, ratchet works good too. But you'll pull this bottom bolt off, and all of it comes off together. That is a timing belt guide washer that goes on the outside of that gear. Alright, then you're going to change from the 10mm to the 12 because your tensioner pulley is a 12mm, and also the top timing gear is a 12mm socket. Alright, so this, I now see that there is no spring behind the actual tensioner here, so that's a no-no in that area, because that spring keeps the tension on this timing belt so that it don't jump timing when it's trying to run. We'll have to add one of those to it once we get back to putting it back together. Alright, so there's your 12mm bolt for the top gear on the timing cover. One thing to note about the gear itself is that it has this notch right here. Be sure you inspect this notch, because if it's got any kind of wear in it whatsoever, is a very high chance that it will pop off of the camshaft, because this is the end of the camshaft. You see that little dot right there? Okay, that dot slides inside this notch right here, and that's what keeps this gear turning as the engine's turning as well. So be sure you inspect that notch on that gear to make sure that that's going to still continue to bite onto this dot here on the camshaft. Sometimes this gear at the bottom right here can be a pain, but most of the time they should just slide right off like that. If they don't, do not try prying on it, because you can very easily break this outer edge right here, and if you do that, you'll be done cut the belt. Alright, so now we got to get the timing cover mounting plate off. You can go back to your 10mm socket. It's got, some of them have 1 and some of them have 2 bolts that hold this plate on the back. And there's your plate. Just throw that off to the side for now, because you're going to want to clean that up as well. Right now I'm going to move on to getting all these plastic pieces off and the exhaust. So these are also 10mm. Most all these little small bolts on here are 10mm too, by the way. Alright, so you see you got your plastic cover here. It's got the model identification on it. We got that out the way now. And here's where you may have to pick up the air, because sometimes the electric just don't break the exhaust manifold bolts loose, but we'll see. Yep. Alright, so you got 4 bolts. That's 3 in my hand. I put 1 in the magnetic tray already. And then your exhaust manifold comes off. You have a gasket there, which you can throw away because you'll be putting a new one on if you're doing this. And depending on what cart this particular motor comes out of, like you have your Marathons that are set up a little differently than your TXTs are. The TXT has this particular swiveling bracket for your throttle linkages. The Marathon a lot of times does not have this bracket, but you will probably need to also have a 10mm wrench. I have a speed ratchet here because there are 10mm bolts in behind this bracket here that you want to break loose. You cannot get to with a gun or a ratchet. And then you got one on the back side right here that you need to break loose also, that you cannot get to. You can get to it with a ratchet, but you can't get to it with a impact gun. But with a wrench, you can also do the same thing. But there are four of these again, 10mm small, very short bolts that go in this actual metal heat shield right here. You see there's the heat shield there, and it has, like I said, 4 bolts, and one here, one here, one here, and then one at the top that holds it to the engine. Alright, so now we got to get the valve cover and the camshaft cover plate off. That way we can get the camshaft out, we can get the rocker arms out, and then be ready to get our head off. Again, 10mm, and again it's 4 of those little small short screws, and then a plate that has a gasket on the back of it that seals it off so it doesn't leak oil out of the camshaft part. So the valve cover has 6, and they'll all be pretty much the same. I normally see them all the same. 6 10mm that have a small, maybe 1/4-inch shank on top of it, at the very top of the bolt there. Sometimes you might have to pry open the valve cover because they do get stuck. There we go, got our valve cover off and out the way. Now I'm gonna take my hand and just pop the opposite side, the gear side of the camshaft, to get it to come out. There we go. Alright. There's your camshaft out. Now you got to get the rocker arm assembly out as well. And so right down inside your rocker arm assembly, you have your pin that holds the rocker arms across the top here, where your pin has a little slit in it right there. Alright, so what I like to do, I like to take a flathead screwdriver, stick it in that little slot right there because it's not going to hurt anything, and then you just pull towards you and that pin will slide until you can get enough of the pin out to grab it and slide it the rest of the way out. You can see how I got my pin slid halfway out there. Alright, so I'll take and I'll grab everything in here just so it don't fall. It's okay if it does, it ain't going to go down inside the engine. All the parts too big. Alright, so once you get your rocker arms out, you want to flip them over and check their riding surfaces to make sure they don't have major pits in them or any gouges or anything that's going to cause it to not adjust the valves properly when you go to do that. These are in great shape. Pin looks great, good and smooth. So we can put these away and continue on. This area here is your oil pump. Just below it, right here, is your drain plug for the oil. Okay, so now that we got the oil drained out of the engine, we're going to get this oil pump out. There's 3 10mm bolts that holds this cover on. So this cover is sealed off by a O-ring, and so you'll have a new O-ring in the gasket kit you'll get with going with rebuilding one of these. So you could take the dipstick end. There's 2 parts to this oil pump, a big ring and then a little star gear that goes inside the big ring. You can take and just ever so slightly pull until it starts moving out. There you go. Here's the big ring that looks like it's got a star in the middle of it. And then all you gotta do is pull your little star gear off. That's on the opposite side of the balance shaft, actually, inside the motor. And so when the motor's turning, turns this little star gear, which then turns this, which creates oil pressure and pushes it up into the upper cylinder, or the upper drivetrain there, lubricating everything. Then you have 2 12mm bolts at the top of your side cover. Then you're going to take your 3-pound hammer and just lightly tap on that until you break the seal loose. Then you should be able to just come in here and work it off by hand. Just like that. There's our side cover. You can see the inner part there. Look at the sludge build up here. That's pretty typical of your EZGO motors. You have these little spacers on the end of these gears. Both crankshaft and balance shaft side, you can see the washer there, or the spacer there. Alright, and then you have your timing marks. 2 dots on the balance gear, then there's 1 dot on the crankshaft gear. You need to take that 1 dot and line it up in the middle of the 2 dots that's here. So you can see that tooth will go in between these 2 dots on the balance shaft. The last thing is that there's a little O-ring right here that seals off the oil pump journal from the side cover, because the oil pump is here. It's shoving oil into this hole here and up the head, up the cylinder, the engine block, up into the head of the engine, and then that squirts it into right onto the camshaft basically. So you need to make sure you keep these pieces if they fall off. I generally don't take those spacers off of the balance shaft, nor do I take it off the crankshaft unless I'm having like an issue with needing to repair the crankshaft or something. That's the only time I'll take it off, but I'd like to leave them on there so that I know that they don't get gone. Again, to get that O-ring out of there, I'll take the dipstick again and just stick it in there, pull that O-ring out, grab a hold of it and put it in my magnetic tray so that I know it don't get gone either, because you definitely want to keep that. You have 3 bolts on the inside of the head, and then you're going to have 4, one here, there, and 1 down on that corner there, that you take off to get the head off of it. So let's make that happen. Again, this is where you're going to probably use your air impact, because these things have a pretty substantial amount of torque on them. So 7 bolts total there for your head. Again, you just want to set them off to the side, and at this point all you got to do is just pull your head off, come right off. And I can see already in this machine that the intake valves have got some wear on them, because they're sitting a lot lower than what they should be in here. So this is probably one of the main reasons why this engine was having troubles to start with. But we'll get to that once we get this thing torn apart. Alright, so at this point I'm going to pull this head gasket out of our way. It looked good, still sealed off pretty good. We're going to get our pins out, our dowel pins for the head, and you're going to retain those in your magnetic tray as well. Head gasket you can just throw away because you'll receive a new one. Balance shaft gear, and that's just a couple of little wiggles, and it'll should slip right on out of there. And then we'll put that to the side with the rest of our parts. A 10mm on a ratchet. You're probably going to want to do deep well or either a short well on a short extension. Piston rod, the caps, we're after their bolts, the rod cap bolts. And so again, I'm going to use a air ratchet here to do this, but you can, if you don't have access to air or electric tools like that, you absolutely can use just a normal standard ratchet to do this with. Alright, so the pistons look, at least this one looks good on its connecting surfaces. No major scars or anything that would concern me to not reuse those. Rods, the pistons look pretty good as well. Yeah, like I said, the pistons look pretty good. There's no real scarring, no breaking or nothing like that. The rings look pretty wore out though. They're awfully thin. But we're going to set that to the side for the time being. Get this other one out real quick. Okay, same for this one. Looks good. No major faults in it whatsoever. I'd reuse these in a heartbeat. I will be reusing these actually. And that's a good thing if you can do that, because that's kind of part of some of the expense. If a rod breaks, the rods are not cheap, but you know, if one breaks, what can you do? And again, piston looks really good. I can hit this with a wire wheel, knock all this nasty carbon burn off of it. Rings are a little weak on this one as well too, so two things here that this engine now I have found to be a problem is that the rings are weak, probably causing a weak compression, wouldn't run very well, and then also those two intake valves that I'm going to show you more on later, causing it not to seal off properly when they close back up, which could allow fuel to dump in a little more than normal, which could cause it to run a little worse. But we're going to pull this crankshaft out now. Check our connecting surfaces on the crankshaft. Looks really good there. Looks good there. So I see no reason to do any kind of major work to the crankshaft. The final thing that we'll do is get this oil filter pulled out. And generally they are 10mm bolts as well. 3 10mm screws holding that filter in there. And there's your filter. She's right there. I normally take a flathead screwdriver or a pick of some sort. But as I was saying, you can take a pick, pull that out the way, because you're also going to get that new. The next step before getting this thing cleaned up is going to be to pull out all our seals, like our balance shaft seal, our crankshaft seal. You have a seal in the side cover that does the fan, or the fan side of the engine. That's a seal on that side, and then you have a seal right there on the camshaft. So you want to get all that pulled out, get those seals pulled out. They sometimes can be in there pretty good. That's what I was talking about, our seals. That's your balance shaft seal there. Alright, so my engine block is free and clear of all parts and pieces. I'm going to pull the seal out of the side cover here. Got that one out. That's your fan side of the engine case seal. I'm going to pull the seal out of the head. Alright. There's your camshaft seal. All these seals do come with the new gasket kit. The collets and the retaining cap of your valve spring cap basically. We're going to knock those out, pull all the valves out of this thing. Just a little love tap most of the time will make them let go. Alright, now I got all 4 of my springs, my retainer caps, and the locking collets out. So we're going to push each one of these valves out. There's our exhaust valve. Oh yeah, that's the intake valve. Here's going to be the other intake valve. Yeah, they definitely wore out. I'll show you a little bit better. Alright, there we go. Got all 4 valves out. Now this is ready. Well, after you pull your valve seals off the top of your valve seats, take a pair of pliers and just wiggle them. They'll come right off. After you get those off, that'll be ready to clean up. You're going to get these valve seals pulled off of here, and just as simple as that, comes right off. A little twist and they'll let go. Of course, it's good when they have oil up there already too, because it's going to make it slick. But there you go, all 4 valve seals. Okay, so before I do any actual major cleaning, I go ahead and I clean up the valve surfaces with a drill attachment that's like a wire brush. Don't take a whole lot. All you're doing is just trying to knock out the carbon from all those that build up there, and that's all your main goal is. So alright, so you can see the drill has made a mess of that. I'm going to get that washed off real quick. Alright, there's a better look at it. I'm going to hit it just a little bit more, mainly on the exhaust side. That's got a little more build up on it. Alright, there we go. So we got it cleaned up about as good as we're going to be able to get it. Cleaned up nice. And I'm not taking any real metal off of here. I'm just making it to where it's a good clean surface again. Knocking the old gasket head gasket material off. But it may be hard to see on camera too, but you can see all the residue that got built up right there from the gasket material, and where it's still oily, it's stuck to that. Well, when I go to wash this off outside with the pressure washer, that's going to be gone. So kind of takes a little time off of your build. Alright, so that's done for the head. Then I'm going to go take this and put it in my parts washer real quick and let it be soaking so I can get some of this nasty built up dirt and oil off of there. So the next thing I do before we go out and clean real hard is that you got to get the gasket material off of your side cover sealing surface. And all I'm doing here is just trying to knock off the old surface so that we get a new sealing surface. Alright, there you go. And you can see that's good, clean, clear surface again. And that's going to go to our parts washer as well. Let it soak for a little while. Try and get all that nasty mess to kind of break loose on there, so that way when we pressure wash it, it'll look like it's metal again. Alright, so now for the final step, which is going to be the engine block itself. This part we have to do our side cover sealing surface, engine block head surface, and re-hone the cylinder walls here. I do try to pull as much of this off as I can before I do hit it with the wheel, just because sometimes the gasket is stuck on pretty good and you have to kind of sit there and let the wheel, you know, chew away at the gasket itself, and sometimes it can get a little hairy when you do it that way, because those wheels, I mean, if you hold them on these engines for a long time, they can eat through the metal. But we're just going to do the same things we did to the side cover and just knock all these gasket particles off and give it a good clean surface again. I do try to clean my pins off as well of the engine. I try to clean these pins off by going around with the wheel and let it and then hit the end, so that way it makes it a little easier to slide. But there you go, you can see the side cover surface is now cleaned off, and we have a good sealing surface there. Alright, so I use two different style of hones. I'll use the stone type to start with, and that's to knock off any major scars or striations that's down through the cylinder. But I use this one, like I said, just to make it a good clean surface again, to get any major striations out, and then I'll go back with a bead hone. So we're going to do that. Do the same thing to both cylinders. Alright, that's all I do with that. And then I'll get out my bead honer. I like to use this bead hone because it helps smooth everything out really, really well. Creates those really nice striations for the rings to seal to. And I'll go in both directions, forward and reverse, 3 times with the bead honer, just because I want it really, really smooth in there and have really good striations in the cylinder wall. Alright, let's wipe these off so you can see down inside of here how nice it is. And you can see how shiny and those striations in there. On those cylinder walls there, that's what you really want to look for. Good clean surface. Get this surface cleaned up with our little ZIZ wheel here, and then we will be on the home stretch. Top of the block where the head surfaces meet, all cleaned up. Side cover area all cleaned up. So now any of the gasket residue from the head gasket and the side cover gasket, and any of the residue that I got while honing the cylinder is all going to get washed away when we take it outside. Alright guys, so there's part one. There's your disassembly of these engines. It's really not stupid hard. You just got to do a lot of paying attention to the small details, like the timing marks, timing gears, just the little things, the little O-ring that's in the side cover, make sure you keep those. Just small little stuff like that, but nothing really hard about it. And so stick around for part two. That's going to be our reassembly video, and hopefully this disassembly video helps you guys out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button. Comment if you got any questions. We'll be sure to answer you. And don't forget to subscribe, guys. We keep continuing to bring out new videos all the time on as much things as we can find that could potentially be detrimental to your golf cart. So we're trying to build you guys up to get these things fixed. And as always, we thank you for watching so much. God bless you all.